Our next guest on the program is an expert on how the right-wing media in the US has helped transform conservatism into a powerful political force, while at the same time promoting the idea of a mainstream liberal bias. Nicole Hemmer is a postdoctoral fellow at the United States Study Centre in Sydney. Planet America's John Barron spoke to her.
Who is he?
Yeah, his name keeps coming up.
I don't know.
Has he got something to do with this program?
No idea.
Have to work it out. Now, John Barron spoke to her about the different styles of both Barack Obama and Mitt Romney and how they're using the media to get across their opposing messages.
In the last week or so, we've seen a couple of very different media performances from Barack Obama. There was the slow jamming of the news on Jimmy Fallon, then the White House Correspondents' dinner on the weekend, and then we saw Barack Obama being a lot more presidential than either of those at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan to mark a year since bin Laden's killing. Can he afford to continue to be those different people in different environments, or at some point does he have to choose, is he going to be entertainer-in-chief or is he going to be commander-in-chief?
I think that he actually can manage to juggle all of these different roles, and I think that what we've seen in the past few days is how you do that, right? You slow jam on Jimmy Fallon, you joke at the White House Correspondents' dinner, and then you show that you really have the mettle to be serious, to go out there and be inspirational in a way that is both presidential and helps play at on the campaign trail.
There has been a lot of criticism, though, from the right, saying that, well, Jimmy Fallon's slow jamming, that was not presidential, and maybe some of the jokes that he made about Mitt Romney, some of the other gags at White House Correspondents, that wasn't appropriate either. Is that just to be expected, or do they have a point? Can you go too far?
You can definitely go too far. I think that with things like the White House Correspondents' dinner, it's such a tradition in Washington that he's probably okay with that. Slow jamming, he's probably going to want to do only every great once in a while, because it definitely can be seen as being unserious. But as long as he's still showing himself as a serious leader, I think he can get away with some of those more fun, maybe frivolous kind of things.
What about for Mitt Romney? He's not got the same kind of easygoing charm. People that know him, though, say that he has a very dry and very good sense of humour that may not come across on late-night TV. Should he be trying to compete in those stakes or just cede that ground and stick to Fox News?
I think he probably shouldn't try to crack wise too many times just because he's not been particularly successful at it. I think that when he tries to do the ordinary person thing, it doesn't necessarily work really well for him. So I think that staying in sort of his earnest mode is probably the best bet for him. Probably not hosting Saturday Night Live.
If Saturday Night Live is home turf for Barack Obama, it seems that Fox News has been very much behind Mitt Romney in recent months. And there were even factions within Fox News. Some were sort of, wanting them to get in behind Romney. Others were still looking for the anti-Romney, the conservative alternative. How important have they been? What have we learned about the influence of Fox News over conservative politics through this campaign?
Well, I think they've been extraordinarily influential in putting forward these anybody but Romney candidates, giving them the kind of airtime that they need in order to really see those surges in the poll. You have to be out there, you have to be present, you have to be somebody that people are aware of, and you have to get that imprimatur that says you're a true conservative candidate. And Fox News gave Romney a hard time in a few interviews, an interview with Bret Baier, with Megyn Kelly. He got a little prickly, but I think they're healing that relationship. Fox News is coming around behind him. Mitt Romney did 6 interviews last week. 5 of them were on Fox News. So there's clearly going to be a coalescing around him. But I think they were important in putting forward alternatives earlier in the campaign.
Has Fox News had a similar effect to perhaps some of the early conservative primary states and certainly some of the conservative alternatives in pulling Mitt Romney further to the right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that has been one of the main goals of conservative media in the primary season, has been to make Mitt Romney realize that he needs the conservative vote, to make him tack to the right, to hold his feet to the fire a little bit. And they're probably going to do that throughout the campaign as well.
So if there is a sense amongst the conservative media and the conservative base of the Republican Party that, well, we've got Mitt Romney, he's going to be the nominee even if he's not our first choice, but we can make him the candidate we want him to be. We can remould him into a latter-day Reagan. Is that going to hold all the way through to November, and would it hold through a Romney presidency, or is he going to have problems there?
He's always going to have problems with the base, I think. I think that there's going to be this tension between conservatives and Romney because they sense, as most Americans do, that Mitt Romney isn't really a movement conservative. So they're going to continue to sort of push and pull him. But the conservative media are also going to work on the base to reassure them that as Mitt Romney shakes the Etch-a-Sketch and moves to the center during the general election, just to reassure the base, look, we're going to continue to hold him to the fire. We're going to continue to put pressure on him to govern further to the right than he runs in the general. And that's going to be one of their main tasks over the next several months and during his presidency if he wins.
It seems with Mitt Romney, even though he's been certainly on the national stage in the United States now for about 5 years since he started running in the 2008 election and never really stopped running, there's still a lot of question marks over who he really is. Part of that comes down to his core beliefs and questions over what he really believes, but also who he is and what informs him. You've been looking a bit at what his father, George Romney, says about Mitt Romney. George also ran for the presidency, albeit briefly, in the late 1960s. What can we learn from father to son?
Well, I think one of the things that we can learn is that Mitt Romney and his father probably are pretty similar. There's this question as to whether Mitt Romney is truly conservative, whether he's truly a moderate, and I think that he's probably a lot like his father. They're both Mormon executives who want to use their business experience in order to revamp government, in order to rescue first their state governments and now the federal government. So I think that they have those same moderate instincts. I think where his father has been particularly influential, though, on Mitt is how the 1968 campaign played out. If you'll remember, George Romney didn't have a solid position on the key issue of the campaign, the Vietnam War. So he goes in sort of favoring it, and then he switches to not favoring it. And in the course of that, he makes a terrible gaffe where he says that he experienced brainwashing at the hands of the U.S. generals, and that gaffe sinks him. And I think that's why we don't know the real Mitt Romney, because he learned from his father that you have to be incredibly careful when you're out there. And that's what we're seeing from Mitt Romney over the last 5 years. Incredibly careful, incredibly calculating, wanting to make sure that he controls his image as much as possible. And what that's done, though, is created this sense of distance and this sense of uncertainty about what he really believes.
One of the refrains that we hear time and again from conservatives is that the mainstream media is in the tank for Liberals. And there was a study done in the 1990s that found that about 90% of the White House press corps in those days would have voted for Bill Clinton. Do they have a point? Because certainly when you look at things like White House Correspondents and you look at Jimmy Fallon, you think, gee, there's a lot of love for Obama there.
There certainly is something to the idea that if you have a bunch of people in one place who all agree on the same basic principles, there can be a reflection of that in their work product. But I would point to a study that just came out last month from the Pew Research Council that studied press coverage of the candidates from January to early April. And what it found was the candidate with the worst coverage wasn't Mitt Romney, it wasn't Newt Gingrich, it wasn't Rick Santorum, it was Barack Obama, who received 4 times more unfavorable coverage than favorable, where Mitt Romney in the same period had about equal. So I think that studies like that show that while there may be a tendency to reflect liberal beliefs, there might be a like for President Obama in the media, it doesn't necessarily always translate to the media being in the tank for Barack Obama.
Nicole Hemmer, thanks for joining us on Planet America.
Great. Thank you so much, John.